Hi there. Welcome to Buckeye Bigfoot. Some encounters I receive don't offer clear answers. There's no dramatic sighting, no perfect photo, just unsettling moments that stay with a person for a lifetime. And tonight's story is a collection of those moments. It begins out on a dark Tennessee backroad and ends deep in a North Carolina field where something revealed itself without ever stepping out fully into the open. So grab your snackage, get on up in the saddle. It's past time that we headed on down the trail into Sasquatch Valley. Let's go. I have a few stories that I would like to share, even though they're not very exciting and I never had a full view of anything. But I know that it was Bigfoot. I have 3 different stories that I'd like to share with you. The most exciting story happened when I was 15 years old, and it was so traumatizing, I pretty much had forgotten about it until the passing of my cousin in 2023. So saying all of that, how about I get started? My first story happened in early July 2015. At the time, I was a truck driver, and I teamed up with a guy named Thomas. He was from Tennessee, a great guy, and he taught me most of the things that I know about trucking and surviving out on the road. Unfortunately, Thomas passed in 2022, and I was with him when this account happened. We had just went to Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee, to a water bottling plant. We picked up about 40,000 pounds of bottled water. It was early morning hours. The sun had not come up yet, and we were on back roads. You want to talk about dark. We were trying to head towards the interstate. I know we were heading towards I-40, but I don't remember the exact back roads we were on. But everything was 2 lanes. And the vegetation was so dense and so overgrown, it came right up to the roadside. We were headed towards 40, and for some reason, Thomas was up in the passenger side seat, and we were having a small conversation while I was driving down these roads. And then I noticed a sign that I had passed. It said, "Road closed." By the time I had realized what the sign said, it was too late. Within another mile or so, I was on a 2-lane road in a very large semi-truck, almost impossible for us to be able to turn around. Thomas was the type of individual that wanted you to know that he was always in control. He had every situation handled. He never lost his cool. He never lost his temper. So that's the scenario. Thomas jumps out of the truck and decides that he's going to walk down the road and see why the road is closed. I stayed with the truck with 4-way flashers on. We stopped in the middle of this road, and lo and behold, I see him walking down the middle of the road with his iPhone in hand, and all he was using was his flashlight from the phone. I see him walk about 1/4 of a mile, turn a curve, and then I couldn't see the light anymore. And remember, it was dark. I mean darker than dark. All I could see was to where the headlights went, and with his light out, I couldn't notice anything else. And like most truck drivers, of course, every opportunity that I stopped, I picked up my phone and began to read messages, check emails, and all this other stuff. So I'm sitting in the truck, waiting on him, and I keep glancing up. I see nothing. Then after about 5 or 6 minutes, I noticed in the distance a light falling all over the place, just back and forth, bouncing up and down. I had no idea what was going on. Well, what ended up happening was Thomas gets right to the end of the lights of the truck, and he stops. Then he kind of gains his composure about himself, and then he casually walks into the light, comes up to the truck. He was white as a ghost when he sat down, and he was breathing so hard he could barely catch his breath. He told me that while he was out there, that it was a small creek, and it had kind of washed out the road. You could tell by the debris on the road and stuff like that, that it had came over the road, and that's why it had been closed. He said, though, it wasn't like that anymore, but he didn't know if the road was structurally sound. So I asked him if he was okay during this scenario. He told me that when he had gotten into the small washed-out bridge, he heard something. It was almost like he could hear someone talking in the woods, but it was almost out of earshot, just to where you could hear the talking, but you could not make out what they were saying. He said he turned around to come back. He took a step, and right behind the tree line, something else took a step. He took 2 steps, and something right on the other side of the tree line also took 2 steps. So he started walking. He said he could tell that whatever was in that tree line, it was bipedal, and that it was mimicking every single thing that he did. If he took 3 steps and stopped, it took 3 steps and stopped. But it was getting closer and closer to the road. He said the hair on the back of his neck stood up, and he ran as hard and fast as he could back to the truck. So I was like, well, what kind of noises did you hear? And then he started making this gobbling noise with clicks and pops. Sounds like that, he said. The best I can make out, he said, was it might have been some kind of wild hog or something like that on the other side of the tree line. But the noise he made, and the ones he was attempting to make, well, I had already heard those before. The closest thing I could say that they sounded to were the Sierra sounds that I've heard many times. Truth be told, I had listened to a lot of Bigfoot shows at night while I was driving by the time he made those sounds to me. I had heard the Sierra sounds numerous times. I knew he had never heard any of those shows that I listened to because I had a single earpiece that fit right inside my ear. That way, I could listen and make sure I was entertained while I drove, but there was never any noise to disturb him while he was sleeping. Once we realized that the bridge was closed and we had to turn around, he said there was a dirt road right up there, and he said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to pull onto that dirt road. Then I'm going to back the truck out, and we're going to head back the opposite way, and we'll get back on track. Well, Thomas asked me to get out of the truck and make sure everything was okay. Nance, I was so scared to get out of that truck. I was not about to get out. Well, he started backing up, and he said, Are we okay? Is everything good out there? I said, Yeah, it's fine. I can see everything we need to see. But really, I couldn't see anything. But I was not about to get out of that truck. I've heard a lot of the Native American stories about Sasquatch and how they are cannibalistic. They'll eat people. And I'm not trying to be funny here. I know that as a human being, I would be delicious. Just picture a guy that has seasoned himself with so much fast food and all kinds of good stuff. I would be just like eating some kind of good hamburger or a steak or a sandwich or something like that to them. A lot of the times I used to tell people that my hormones smell like fried chicken, and that's why all the voluptuous ladies really liked me. I seemed to draw them in droves. But needless to say, we made it out safe, made it to Interstate 40, and we got back on track. We never saw anything, but we didn't leave that area without being shook up quite a bit. My second story is from 2016, late January. By this time, I had bought my own semi-truck, and during this time, I had actually become a trainer. So I trained several people to drive semi-trucks out on the road, just like Thomas taught me. I had picked up a load of parts for Volvo, and I had to deliver those parts to Dublin, Virginia. It was January 27th, about 4 in the morning. I get to the Volvo plant, and it's dark, and it had snowed. It was cold, and they sent me to a drop yard on the property, which was absolutely massive. I get to a security gate. There's a guard shack there. I speak to the guard. She tells me where to drop my trailer and where to pick up an empty. So I go to the area that she asked me to go to drop my loaded trailer. When I dropped that trailer, I jumped out, and automatically the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I started to get scared for some reason, and I had no idea why. I was the type of individual that I always wanted to be comfortable while I was driving, so all I had on were some athletic basketball shorts, tennis shoes, a t-shirt, even with snow on the ground. During this time, I start to walk back behind my trailer to let the landing gear down and to pull out the pin on the fifth wheel and take my airlines and electrical cable off my trailer. Now that's also known as the pigtail. At that time, something kept telling me I needed to leave. Now let me tell you that human instinct is a powerful thing that we need to pay more attention to. I heard a loud grunt. That's the best way I can explain it. I heard it even with the truck running. It was almost like I could feel it in my body, like something had hit me in the chest. I happened to have a flashlight. I shined it around. I didn't see anything until I started to walk back to the cabin of my truck. I looked down on the ground, and there were 2 sets of massive tracks in the snow. I actually took pictures of those, and I'm going to include those in the email. From the tip of my toe to the heel of my shoe measures exactly 12 inches. In the pictures, you can tell that these feet were a lot larger than mine, one of them being around 18 inches, and the other, I would say, around 20. They were half as wide as they were long, and you can really see some good detail in some of those prints. Not only that, but one of the pictures shows that the creature had to have weighed a lot. The prints sink down through the snow and ice. You can see the ripples in the ice around the feet to show that they sink down further than the people that were walking around them. I don't know how far the tracks went there, but needless to say, I didn't waste any time getting out of there. I had no complications, and I did not see anything else. I really wish I had, because I had my camera ready the whole time. Dark or not, I was still going to at least try to take a picture. My third story is the oldest. It happened 29 years ago in 1996, when I was 15 years old. Back from where I'm from is in North Carolina. We live very close to the Virginia border in central North Carolina. My great-grandfather had a farm that was about 150 acres, and it was split by 2 different counties. There was an area on his farm that was called the Bottoms, which was the lowest part of the land. It had to have been at least 30 acres, flat level, and it was beautiful land that was surrounded by a huge creek that was very deep in some spots, and it was always flowing. This area was prone to flooding, but it didn't flood very often unless we had a whole lot of rain that year. My family were tobacco farmers. So yeah, while I was a kid, a lot of my after-school activities and Saturday activities were out working on that farm, especially in those tobacco fields. I can tell you, I do not miss that. But those fields in the Bottoms, they rotated them every couple of years, so that for 1 year we would have soybeans in those fields. The next year we would have tobacco again, so you have to forgive me. I forget how the rotation went. But one of the fields began to get overgrown over time, so they used the field in front of it. And in North Carolina, Lord knows, we have plenty of pine trees, so a thicket will start, and it doesn't take very long for them to grow. One of the back fields of the Bottoms ended up being a right-sized pine tree thicket. The trees in it were smaller, and it was very thick. You couldn't see anything through them. Needless to say, that year in November, me and my cousin Dusty decided we were going to try to get into deer hunting. So one Friday night, I stayed over at his house. We asked our great-grandparents if we could go hunting down in the Bottoms and see if we could bag ourselves a deer. They agreed, as long as we promised to be as careful as we could. So we stayed up that whole entire night. Now this is back in the time of VHS tapes. We rented 10 hunting videos from the local movie store, and we stayed up all night long watching videos, trying to learn the secret techniques of bagging a big buck. Needless to say, the time comes for us to get up, and my uncle takes us down close to the bottoms and drops us off, knowing we had stayed up all night watching those videos. We didn't want to get up that morning because it was cold, and the frost was thick out there. The ground was frozen, and I remember complaining all the way down to the bottoms. It was probably a good quarter of a mile walk in. We walked at a steady pace. We get to the bottoms and we look, and there's the largest buck you've ever seen, or at least the biggest I had ever seen up to that time. He was big and beautiful, and he was almost a grayish color, like his fur had a gray tint to it instead of a nice brownish color. I guess he was a lot older than most of the bucks in the area, but he was massive. He would have been a prize for sure. My cousin actually had an SKS with a banana clip with 50 bullets in it. I had a 30-30 lever action with 4 bullets. The odd thing about this whole scenario was the deer was actually running towards us until he saw us in a soybean field. Once he saw us, he dropped. It was like he almost tried to lay flat, but you could still see his rack sticking up above the soybeans. Of course, me and my cousin, we just opened fire. He shot 3 or 4 times, and I shot 3 times. And I know we did not hit that deer. As soon as my cousin shot, he jumped to the ground and started crawling towards the soybean field the way a soldier would. The first thing I say is, "What are you doing on the ground? The deer knows we're here. We just shot everything all around that deer." As soon as the deer heard me say that, it stood up and it jumped toward the thicket running right beside the field. And the very next thing you know, a huge hairy arm came out of the side of that thicket and grabbed that deer by the antler on its head. And with a quick flick, snap, and yank, the deer was incapacitated, and it was snatched into the thicket. All you heard was a nasty crunch, a grunt, and that was it. It was silent. Even though it seemed like it happened in a split second, I did see it clear. The arm that came out of the pine thicket was very high off the ground. It had 5 digits on the hand, and it had a dark hair covering the arm. But the skin itself, it was almost black with a grayish coating to it, like the skin was dry. It was very muscular, and it seemed like the biceps and the triceps on the upper arm were as wide as my 15-year-old 30-inch waist. It wasn't so much scary as it was traumatizing. The deer was now gone, and I couldn't believe my eyes. My cousin was like, "I know we got it. I know we got it." He then said, "I heard him fall. I heard the noise." The only thing I could say for sure was, we did not get that deer. Dusty said, "Oh, yes, we did. We got him. We need to go find that deer." I said something got him, but it wasn't us. I said we needed to leave right now. We walked the 3 miles back to my grandma's house, and I asked her to take me home. My cousin, Dusty, told me later that he went back that day, and he could never find that deer. I had no idea he had gone back there alone. He never said anything about seeing anything or noticing anything out of the normal. Needless to say, I have never hunted again. Time being inevitable and cruel at times, this family farm of ours has done nothing but shrink over time. My family got out of farming tobacco, and over the years, the farm has sadly been divided again and again amongst different inheritances. And having a large family, it's broken down to about 20-acre parcels now. My grandmother's is the only one of those that just so happens to have the bottoms. I haven't been there since I was 15 years old. I know that at some point in my life, I just might own that piece of property. I don't know if I have much use for it. Who knows? I may go down there and visit, but I think it's highly unlikely. Please tell the crowd I'm telling these stories in loving memory of Thomas and my cousin Dusty, both who are now passed away. I miss them both. They were a big part of my life, and they will forever be missed. Thank you. Signed, Red Angel. The details here are simple. Sounds in the dark, tracks in the snow, and a brief but terrifying glimpse of raw strength that defies explanation. Maybe that's the nature of these encounters, that they don't give us certainty, just more questions that linger long after the moment has passed. And somehow, that's enough to remind us we're not alone out there. Hey, listen up, Sasquatch. Can you believe it's October already? Or as I like to call it, Squatchtober. Now that means I'm looking for encounters to put together a Halloween marathon. So if you've had a squatchy moment that you think would feel right at home for a night of dark storytelling, please go ahead and send it in to contact@buckeyebigfoot.com. Just be sure to put Halloween Marathon in the subject line or in the email so I know that's what you would like it recorded for. And last but not least, if you're needing to take Buckeye Bigfoot with you on the go, don't forget we now have a podcast version that's available on many podcast platforms. You can find us on Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and many others. And if you have Amazon Music and an Amazon device in your home, just say this: Alexa, play the latest podcast from Buckeye Bigfoot.
Getting Buckeye Bigfoot from Amazon Music. Here's episode 32. From the vault, Bigfoot tried to speak to him.
All right. I guess you heard that. That was the echo here in my office, and it was going to pull up my own podcast just like that. It's that easy. All right, everyone. Listen, it gets dark early now that autumn is here, and it's always darker down in Sasquatch Valley. So I do appreciate your company and staying with me on this journey. We're going to be meeting up again, as you well know. But until we do, please always remember, absence of proof is not proof of absence. Thanks for listening.